Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. So Intel might finally have a handheld gaming PC that makes people pay attention. And I don't mean that in the usual, there's a new chip with better benchmarks kind of way. I mean, this actually feels like a moment where Intel could start pushing back against AMD in this handheld space, but for reals this time. Because here's the thing, guys. So for the last few years, when you were talking about Windows handhelds, you were basically talking about Ryzen, ROG Ally, the Legion Go, Aya Neo, even the older OneXPlayers, right? Most of the conversation has been around AMD, but this Computex wave, we got three different handhelds that were announced with Intel Arc G3 Extreme. The MSI Claw A EXAI Plus, launching June 23rd, the OneXPlayer 3, which is hitting Indiegogo in mid to late June, and the Acer Predator Atlas 8, which is set for October. And the OneXPlayer 3 might be the most interesting of the bunch. So today I want to walk you guys through the OneXPlayer 3, what it actually is, why the Intel Arc G3 Extreme is the part that really matters here, and where this thing fits in a market where the Steam Deck just got more expensive and Intel finally has real handheld chips that they're pushing. So quick context on the OneXPlayer 3. This is an 8.8-inch Windows handheld with a 144Hz OLED display, VRR, HDR, detachable controllers, and a 3-in-1 design. Now here is a fun detail. So that 8.8-inch OLED is actually the same panel as the one in the Lenovo Legion Go 2, which I've been using for a while now, and let me just say it's amazing. So this is a known good screen. The device itself weighs around 927 grams, which pretty much sounds heavy on paper, but when you spread that across the size of the tablet device, it usually feels more balanced than a smaller handheld of similar weight. So it is living in the same world as the Legion Go, but it is pushing harder. You can use it as a normal handheld. You can detach the controllers and you can prop it up like a small tablet. And there is a magnetic backlit keyboard if you want to use it more like a tiny productivity machine. That part is kind of interesting to me because this category is splitting into two lanes now. So you have the smaller handhelds that are mostly gaming devices. And then on top of that, you have the bigger tablet style handhelds that are trying to be a little bit of everything, right? So you have gaming device, mini PC, travel screen, emergency laptop. The OneXPlayer 3 is going in on all of that, right? Real quick, guys, if you like this kind of honest handheld breakdown, please hit subscribe. That is the whole vibe of this channel. And in a second, guys, I'm going to walk you through where this thing actually lines up against the MSI Claw at $1,500 and the Steam Deck after its price hike. So stick around for the new price talk because that is the most interesting part right now. But first, why Intel matters here, guys. So the real story here, guys, is not the OLED screen or the detachable controllers. It is the new Intel Arc G3 Extreme chip itself. This is built on Intel's Core Ultra Series 3 platform, Panther Lake. So it has a 14-core CPU layout that is paired with 12 Xe3 graphics cores that deliver roughly Arc B39 level performance. Intel is also pushing XeSS 3, multi-frame generation, day zero game support, and pre-compiled shaders to pretty much help with stutter. And the last part actually matters. So because handheld gaming is not only about raw power, it is about drivers, shader stutter, whether the game actually launches cleanly when you have 30 minutes to play. That is the part where I am still a little bit cautious with Intel, right? The hardware can look great on paper. The benchmarks can also look great in a controlled test, but the real test is when you start loading up your actual Steam library, your old games, your new games, bad PC ports, weird launchers, etc., right? That is where the Arc G3 Extreme has to prove itself. Now, the parts that actually stand out to me are practical, right? The screen first, so 8.8-inch OLED, 144 Hz, VRR, HDR, that is the kind of panel that makes a handheld pretty much feel premium, but in a good way, right? It is meaningfully bigger and faster than the MSI Claw's 8-inch 120Hz IPS. The battery, 85 watt hours that are built in, that is big for this kind of category. It does not automatically mean amazing battery life because power draw does matter and Windows handhelds still chew battery fast, but the foundation is there. The I/O looks genuinely useful. You have a USB 4 port, you have a USB-A, micro SD, headphone jack, and mini SSD expansion. I like when handhelds pretty much give you real options because the second you start using one of these like an actual PC, one port is never enough. So For example, comparing it with a Steam Deck, you pretty much get one USB-C port, and at times that is just not enough, right? Also, the detachable controllers and the magnetic backlit keyboard. The controllers use Hall effect joysticks with rear buttons, which is a real upgrade over cheaper handhelds because Hall effect sticks pretty much do not drift the way that standard ones do. I like the idea of the whole detachable setup, but I still need to see how comfortable the controllers feel over long sessions. That is always the catch with this type of design, right? It can look great in product shots and just feel awkward after 30 minutes. Okay, so let's get to the price. So the OneXPlayer has not announced final pricing, but the Indiegogo campaign launches in mid to late June. Now, reporting suggests that this thing is going to land somewhere between $1,500 on the low end and over $2,000 on the high end. So yeah, it's a bit pricey, but here is where the conversation gets interesting. So the Steam Deck OLED 512 just went up to $789, right? The 1 terabyte is now $949. So the gap between a top-end Steam Deck and a premium Intel handheld is now closer than people realize. And then there is also the MSI Claw EX AI Plus, which uses the exact same ROG 3 Extreme chip and is targeting $1,500. So you pretty much have three Intel handhelds in the same wave, basically the same horsepower, and the OneXPlayer 3 is asking for a premium on top of that for the 3-in-1 design, the bigger 144Hz OLED, and also the keyboard, right? This is the actually buying decision that you have to make. Do you want raw value? The MSI Claw at $1,500 is the answer, right? Do you want the bigger screen and the laptop style flexibility? Then the OneXPlayer 3 makes more sense here. But are you willing to pay for it? So my honest take is this, guys. So the OneXPlayer 3 just looks amazing. It's exciting. Intel RG3 Extreme is the most interesting Intel handheld push that we've seen so far. Now, the fact that we have three different handhelds that are using this chip pretty much means that Intel actually has a real foothold in the category for the first time, right? But this cannot just be expensive and impressive. It has to pretty much be smooth. It has to have a good user experience, and it has to be reliable. It has to take advantage of how much better Windows runs on handhelds now compared to a couple of years ago, and the price has to make sense for what you actually get. Because at $1,500 to $2,000, you are not really competing with a Steam Deck anymore. You are basically competing with gaming laptops. You are competing with mini PCs. You are competing with everybody that is chasing that very specific premium buyer. So if Intel actually pulls this off, the handheld space gets way more interesting immediately. AMD has needed a real competitor here for a while, and the Steam Deck set the software bar high. The ROG Ally and the Legion Go pretty much pushed Windows handhelds forward, and now Intel has a chance to come in and say, that they can do this too, right? But they pretty much still have to prove it in real use, not just in press shots, right? So tell me where you guys stand on this. Would you take a chance on the Intel handheld this generation, or are you waiting for reviews? And if the OneXPlayer 3 ends up at $1,800 to $2,000, would you guys go for that? Or would you take the MSI Claw at $1,500 with the same chip? I will be linking the article down below to Saavedra.com if you guys want to have a read. I'm Saavedra. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll catch you all in the next one.